Hi, today we're going to cover the four biomolecules and talk about their roles in cellular function. So, we all know that living cells are built from and that operate using biomolecules. And the four main biomolecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So, let's explore these four main types and how their structure relates to their function within the cell. Carbohydrates. These are sugars and starches, and the elements that make up your carbohydrates are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Um, a single molecule or monomer of a carbohydrate is called a monosaccharide, and when multiple of them join together or come together to make a larger molecule, that would be a polysaccharide. The carbohydrates are used as a quick source of energy because they're very, very easily broken down. They also make up parts of your cell, like the cell wall and the cell membrane. So, for example, here you see a carbohydrate chain on the outside of your cell membrane. Next, you have lipids. Another term for lipids would be fats. So these are fats and oils. They also have the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Now, the big difference between the lipids and the carbohydrates is that most carbohydrates come in a ring structure, and then lipids usually have fatty acid tails, so hydrocarbon tails. So, in other words, these tails that you see right here, these are made up of hydrogens and carbons. You have two types. You have saturated fats versus unsaturated fats. Your saturated fats, every single carbon is bonded to a hydrogen, and then your unsaturated fats, they have this double bond here, creating a little kink or a bend in that chain. So usually your unsaturated fats liquid at room temperature because it prevents stacking or compressing of those molecules, whereas the saturated fats are straight chains and they can pack themselves together really tightly, so they are solid at room temperature. Now, lipids, their function is to store energy, so basically long-term energy. And then you also have phospholipids, which make up your cell membrane. So if you take a look here, phospholipid has a phosphate head and then the lipid tail, and it forms a bilayer. Okay, and we'll cover that in another video, the cell membrane. The other type of biomolecule would be a protein. So we all hear that we need to eat a lot of protein, right? But why? Proteins are made up of amino acids, so that's a monomer of a protein. And when all amino acids come together to form chains, that will be a polypeptide chain because the amino acids are joined together by peptide bonds. The elements that you find within your amino acids or your proteins are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and you have this additional nitrogen. Proteins have different functions, and their function is based on the shape. So after we make proteins during protein synthesis, we will cover that in another video. The proteins, based on the genetic code, they fold into specific shapes, and those shapes give them a specific function. So some of these functions in the cell would be to build muscle and provide support and then transport within the cell membrane. So for example, here you have these transport proteins that allow molecules to move into and out of your cell membrane. Lastly, we have nucleic acids. These would be things like DNA and RNA. Now, these nucleic acids are made up of nucleotides. So the monomer is a nucleotide, and then long chains would give us those nucleic acids. The nucleotide has a specific structure. You have a sugar, and depending on whether it's DNA or RNA, those sugars will be slightly different. You have a nitrogenous base attached, and then you have a phosphate. So the elements that we have that make up nucleic acids will still be carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and then we have nitrogen in the base, and then you have the phosphorus from this phosphate group up here. Now, the main function of your nucleic acids is to carry genetic information. So DNA is the one that holds the code for making all of the different proteins, and then RNA is a molecule that we produce, and it helps to translate that code to actually make the proteins. Okay, so just to summarize, the structure of each biomolecule, so basically the arrangement of the atoms, directly impacts its function within a cell. Carbohydrates provide energy, lipids form barriers and store energy, proteins perform various tasks, build muscle, provide structure, as access transport proteins, and then nucleic acids, they control all your cellular activities by controlling protein synthesis. And all of these biomolecules all work together to ensure that your cell survives.